Hey everyone, this is Katie, Sweetman with Empowering Astrology, and this is another live look at the astrology of September 7th through 13th, 2020. So we're getting further into Virgo season, so which means that we are here, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. It's about harvest, it's about coming back to school, as much as we can do that right now. It's about getting in touch with the things that are practical and necessary after perhaps a long summer or times when we were prioritizing fun when we were in Leo season. There's nothing wrong with that. Astrology teaches us that's time. We have a time and place for everything in this world. So here we are, started this really big week. And before I kind of go into this week's astrology, I just want to use this opportunity to again introduce who I am. If this is your first time joining one of my live broadcasts, or if you're watching the replay on YouTube or on IGTV or on Spotify, I work under the name Empowering Astrology. I am a psychic medium and astrologer here in Brooklyn, New York, and we've been doing these live looks at the astrology for a little over a year. Can you believe that? But we use this time to obviously discuss what the astrology is, but I have a very particular perspective, and I use astrology to, how do I work on myself? How do I be a better version of myself? How do I better serve? How do I be a better human in this world? And I always tell people that the astrology is just 50%. So if you're watching this and you're wondering, when is everything going to get better? When is all these things going to happen in my life? Like, you're the other 50%. So hopefully some of the things that I'm sharing with you is starting to illuminate all the different permutations in your life of like, what's going on in that other 50%, what's going on in you. That part is on you. We'll talk about the astrology, which is the other 50%. But here's the thing, like that 50% that's you, that interfaces with the astrology, there's all these different layers, there's all these parts of you that you know are conscious, that you don't know, that are unconscious. You've got fears and phobias. So how do we sort of work on ourselves? How do we bring ourselves into the astrology each week so that we can be the best 50% that shows up with the astrology? So if I'm sharing different things throughout this week, I try to be conscious of, at least, to how do we best work with this? What are the different ways in which this could manifest and show up in our lives? And I wrote this in my newsletter this week, and shameless plug, I do a weekly newsletter, so you can, in the show notes, there's a link to sign up for my weekly newsletter. But I had been looking at the week of September 7th. When I was looking into the astrology of 2020, this week was like, I had a big question mark. It's like, what is going on this week? Why? Because Mars turns retrograde on September 9th, so on Wednesday, and it's doing so near the very end of Aries. It's doing so, making what's called a square to Saturn. It's sort of activating, bringing up a lot of these bigger themes that we've been working on this year as a collective. 2020 is kind of a crazy year. So Mars retrograde doesn't happen very often. It's I think every 2 years, if I'm remembering my astrology correctly. When Mars goes retrograde, we have to, just like any retrograde, we have to do that planet differently. We can't keep going forward. We can't keep going after what we want. Mars is very individualistic. It's very much the I, the self. It's motivation, it's courage, it's the fuel and fire that you need to live your life. Without, this is not a dig on Mars, because we need Mars. Like, without Mars, there would be no drive and motivation. We see this with people who have just lost their motivation. They've lost their drive. How can things happen? So this is why the astrology can give us an opportunity to sort of restart that pilot light, but we still have to take action. We still have to restart the pilot light ourselves. So when Mars turns retrograde, we can't take action the way that we want to. We can't move forward the way we want to. We have to take a second look at how we use our Mars. Now, each and every one of you watching, you have Mars somewhere in your chart. It was somewhere in the sky at the moment that you're born. It might be in a sign that is very different than the one that you were born with, where your sun is. So Mars in the chart, it talks about what motivates you, what really gets you stirred up, what kind of gives you that mojo, that moxie, that self-direction. The people that are very competitive or they are very self-motivated, self-directed, they generally have a strong Mars. Mars is a very competitive planet, which competition can be good. There's good sides to competition. There's not so good sides to competition. And we need that Mars like gas in the car. No gas in the car, we're not going to go anywhere. So maybe this has been a year where there has been no gas in the car. There's been a lot of like stagnancy, or maybe we've had to face the things that haven't been in alignment with, let's say, the lives that we really truly want. 2020 is a huge year of reconstruction. We knew this going into 2020 astrologically. But if you have a story around Mars, and that story rather, might be that you're afraid to take action, or you're afraid to be courageous, or you're overly competitive, or you're overly aggressive, or your Mars is nowhere to be seen. Where to go? So Mars retrograde gives you an opportunity to do things differently. A little personal share, I have Mars in the 12th. So if you know anything about astrology, the 12th house of astrology is a very quiet, secluded, sometimes hiding place for Mars to be. It's a Mars that's sort of afraid to use itself because it's afraid of hurting people. It's very kind of empathic, compassionate. I mean, I do have Mars conjunct Neptune. I'm sharing this is because maybe there's a story with your Mars that was throughout your life, but there comes a point when you use that Mars differently. You sort of integrate it. What the limitation was before is not the limitation now. So I have to have a very different relationship with my Mars, even though it's in the 12th. I have to use it in a way that's very conscientious. It's in a way that is more aligned towards spiritual purpose and path than for my own sort of gratification. So that's my own Mars story of Mars square Saturn. So I have to be really kind of disciplined and regimented. I really have to work to bring that Mars out. So you all have your own Mars story. And if you don't know where your Mars is, you can Google where's my Mars, or you can look up your own birth chart. There are so many apps these days that a lot of you probably have your chart on your phone. You don't need your birth time, but sometimes it's necessary to know your birth time because Mars changes signs. But anyway, we are checking in with Mars this week. So when I looked into the astrology of 2020, I was like, what's going on this week? Because Mars went into Aries at the very end of June. I think it was the 27th it went into Aries. Mars is at home in Aries. Mars has a lot of strength and dignity, we would say in astrology. It's powerful, it takes action, it moves forward, also can be very aggressive. It really depends on the consciousness in which we're using our Mars, or collectively we are using our Mars, because we have a personal relationship with Mars, we have a collective relationship with Mars. And this is why we see kind of key Martian themes out in the world right now. So Mars went into Aries, and it has a lot of strength, it has a lot of power, and then it comes up to its retrograde, which is on the 9th, 2 days from now as I record this. And it's coming up to a retrograde in what's called a square to Saturn. Saturn is like checks and balances. It's like accountability. It's boundaries. It's doing the right things. And Saturn is either like a hard stop for that Mars, or it's a need to bring things back into alignment, because Saturn loves alignment, it loves balance. But for some people, it might be, and maybe not, I hope not, like a brick wall. And when I was looking at Mars turning retrograde at the beginning of this year, and I was even telling this to clients, I was like, we're moving forward, but then we have to hit the brakes. Saturn is brakes, Mars retrograde brakes. So I'm not sure what's going to happen this weekend, but we have to sort of keep our eye on Mars, knowing that what does Saturn want? Accountability. It wants balance. It wants harmony. Mars can't keep pushing forward. But I think that this is a time when collectively we have to work on our Mars. Personally, we have to work on our Mars. We have to find courage. We have to find bravery. If we haven't been able to express our will, express our power, we have to find it. If we've been overly using our Mars to dominate people, to take power, to, God forbid, hurt people, we have to deal with it. There's a Saturn, Mars square Saturn, there's a karma with our Mars. Karma just means cause and effect, checks and balances. So that's part of this theme that's running its way into November 13th, when Mars turns direct at, I believe it's 13 degrees of Aries. So we're doing this work, and I've been thinking a lot about Mars retrograde. I mean, number one, I'm a Scorpio, so Mars is my planet, and to be fair, I'm not historically very jazzed about Mars retrograde, but it is what it is. We all have a time when we have to do retrograde. It's just, we can't always move forward, we have to pull back. And I've been watching, I've said this in previous updates, I've been watching a lot of 80s movies. Like, I'm a child of the 1980s and 90s. I don't know, maybe it doesn't look like it, but I was watching Karate Kid, and I like I mentioned this a few weeks ago, and movies are great in the sense that they connect us to these universal archetypes, these archetypes that are in all cultures, all humanities, all stories. This is the sort of thing that Joseph Campbell talked about in The Hero of a Thousand Faces, hopefully I'm remembering the title correctly. This idea of these stories that are inherent to humanity. And I thought the movie still holds up, even though it's from 1984, because it teaches us the two sides of Mars. There's the Mars that is the bully. There's the Mars that uses its aggression and power to hurt people, to take things, to inflict pain. There's parts of the movie that are kind of currently I'm blanking on, but I was like, yes, that's negative Mars. Now, we could all use our Mars in that way, but there's this kind of moral tale in Karate Kid of like the other side of Mars. Like, how do you do Mars nobly? At the end of the movie, I'm not going to give it away, but there's certain things that happen where it's like these two Marses come to battle. And there's like, who's going to win? Like, is it the negative Mars? Is it the bully? Is it the positive Mars? The Mars that works and perfects and leads and protects. And we all have, it doesn't, matter what your gender persuasion is and how you identify. Like, we all have Mars within us. We all need that fuel and fire. So this is just now there's like the not remake, it's like a spin-off set 30 years in the future that's on Netflix. Anyway, I'm watching too much 80s stuff. But anyway, I was like, this is really appropriate for Mars retrograde, because I think that we can really connect with the archetype of Mars and Aries. Is it the warrior or is it the bully? We have both within us, even though we're looking at these two sides, and we might be like, oh no, I'm Ralph Macchio, or oh no, I'm the other guy whose name I'm blanking, Johnny. So but you have both within us, within yourselves, and we have to look at that duality, and that's what life is inherently. It's about duality, the duality within, the duality outside of ourselves. So you now have to be super sharp in your self-awareness and your self-assessment and how you move throughout your day, starting in this week or even before, of Mars in your life. And I get a lot of people who come to my doorstep as clients, and they want certain things in their lives, but there's no Mars. There's no action, there's no fire, there's no fuel, there's no spark, and there could be a lot of complicated reasons about why that happens, and maybe it's the past, maybe it's trauma. So maybe if that's the case for you, how do you change the story? How do you transmute the lack of Mars and the negative Mars and bring it into a different way of expressing itself throughout this retrograde? This is how we use astrology to work on our 50%, both the stuff that we know about ourselves, the stuff that we don't know about ourselves. Here's the thing, you could be the most kind, docile person, but if somebody steps on a certain button with you, you might lose your stuff. And some of you this week, you might be losing your cool over something that you didn't even know you could lose your cool over, because the retrograde is showing you something within that you've not addressed, you've not healed, you've not integrated. So if you're somebody, for example, that suppresses your rage, here comes Mars retrograde. Why am I so angry? I know I've gotten that from a few people lately, because the retrograde is sort of activating this energy within yourselves, this collective energy, so that we can help heal it. And of course, everything that we do for ourselves is something that we also do for humanity, because we're all connected. So these are some key points to think about while Mars is retrograde. Maybe watch Karate Kid. I don't know. This is not a personal endorsement. I've not been paid. It's just sometimes as an astrologer, I'll see a movie or I'll read something and I'm like, that's Venus, that's Mars, that's Saturn, and how every planet, every sign has two sides. So we're really working through the two sides of Mars while Mars is retrograde. Now, retrogrades are a time that's more about reflection than moving forward. So I will say, for typically when Mars is retrograde, especially for some signs, this could be the Aries, this could be the Taurus, this maybe even the Scorpio as well. You just have a little bit less energy. You have to rest. Retrogrades teach us that, hey, it's time to rest sometimes. But I will go around the zodiac in a moment, so you know what area of your life you need to maybe pull back on. You might have to integrate something that hasn't been integrated. You have to take a second look at your shadow, your unconscious, the invisible parts of that 50% of yourself. If sadness, grief, and depression have been something that you've been working through lately, or even longer than that, how do you get back your Mars? Before I go through the zodiac signs, I want to talk about positive Mars. Mars is a very physical planet. It needs like exercise, it needs physicality, and I know we live in a time when just kind of going out and about is not as easy for everybody to do, so we can't always go to the gym, but this might be a time, if you're feeling a little low on energy or a little low on emotional energy, ask yourself, like, do you need more exercise? Do you need to walk? Do you need to get the blood flowing? Do you need more physicality in your life? Do you need to get back in touch with the lower parts of your body, that root chakra? Because Mars really kind of helps us connect to that root chakra. So these are things you have to give Mars an outlet. If you're not doing Mars, Mars will do you. If you're not doing any planet, that planet will do you. You'll show up as other people in your life. If you're not doing your Mars, maybe there's somebody that's doing the Mars for you. They're being aggressive, they're being overbearing, they're being, God forbid, a bully. So these are all just, I'm giving you lots of things to chew on. So as we do our homework, it's Virgo season after all, it's about homework. We do our homework over the next few weeks. So we'll go around the zodiac. So Aries, Mars has been in Aries since the end of June. So you've had a planet that's been on your side. It's been about vitality. You've maybe felt courage. It's been about moving forward and taking action. But Mars is sort of turning retrograde in a tricky spot. It's, like I said, it's doing it square to Saturn, it's doing it square to Pluto in addition. So this is the time when you now have to pull back, you have to rest, you have to renegotiate, you have to double check how you've been leading and driving and steering the car, steering your life, so to speak, because this is a time right now, Aries, it's so much about career, and it will be until the end of the year. So if you've been sort of full steam ahead on something that maybe isn't the best, then Mars retrograde is giving you a time to pull back and reflect, rest. Maybe you're a little bit lower in vitality. Just, take your vitamins. So that when you get towards the end of this year in November, you have a lot more energy, you have a different perspective. You have a different perspective on yourself and how you normally move forward. Taurus. So Taurus, you're in a very interesting time with Mars retrograde because Mars is in what's called, well, it's your 12th sign, it's your 12th house. It's the most spiritual, intuitive, mysterious part of your chart. So Taurus, this has been a time when maybe there's been a lot of soul searching, a lot of existential searching, like who am I? What does this all mean? Letting go of things. It's a time about shedding layers. And Mars in the 12th, and like I said earlier, because I have Mars in the 12th, Mars in the 12th, you can't do like human level stuff with Mars in the 12th. There has to be like a higher purpose. There has to be a greater good. It has to be spiritually aligned. You have to kind of get in touch with you, something greater than you, whether it's spirituality, universality, your higher self. So this is a time when you have to walk back on some things, and maybe you've not had a chance to address some of the things that are in this very spiritual place that you've been occupying. Maybe you need to kind of get a new perspective on some of the things that you've done or things that you've taken action on over the last few months. So this is a time, Taurus, you might feel actually a bit lower on energy. It's a time to rest. It's a time to meditate. I know that Mars is a very physical sign and it wants action in general, but it's in a part of the chart that is the least physical. So that action is happening on a spiritual level. It's happening on an unconscious level. It's happening in your dreams. Maybe you're having very vivid dreams right now. Gemini, this is about friends, community, your social connection. So Mars has been heating things up since the end of June. Maybe there's been some things going on in your social circle. Mars is not exactly about forming alliances. It more wants to do its own thing. It can be a little hot and bothered and aggressive, but this part of your life has been a bit strong the past few months. And so Mars retrograde, you might have to go back and rework something with a friend. You might have to take a second look about how you do friendships or how you connect to people in the world, or even like your goals and your hopes and your wishes for the future, because it's a very future-oriented part of your chart. So Mars is going to be walking you back at this time. I mean, I will say, Gemini, you are sort of in the home stretch of a little bit of a difficult time. This is a difficult time that's been going on since 2018, so you've got a few more months, and you like Taurus, but maybe in a much different way. You've also been doing a lot of soul searching, so this is a different type of soul searching. This is like soul searching of where do I go? Where do I go in the world? What is this? Where are we headed? What's the future? So maybe that's where your head is at right now, Gemini, in addition to having to work through and deal with a lot of heavy emotional themes at the moment. Cancer, this is your career sign. So Cancer, you've been in a time, possibly a career peak since the end of June, a time when your professional life is got a lot going on. Maybe you're using that Mars drive and competition to really move forward with your professional life, go after, because Mars loves to hunt, it loves to compete, like go after the things that you really want in your professional life. So this has been a time that's been about responsibility and ambitions and building something in your professional life. But with Mars retrograde, you can't quite move forward anymore. You maybe have to look at the things that you haven't had a chance to look at because you've been too busy driving forward. So where are the imbalances? Where are the cracks? Where are the things that aren't working? Where have you not had a chance to really focus your attentions on? So if there's something going on in your professional life, Cancer, if it's an issue, it may not resolve until the end of this year, because Mars again turns direct on November 13th, and then by the new year, it's finally out of Aries. But this is a time when it's really so much about your professional life right now, in addition to other things for you, Cancer. Leo, so this is the part of your chart that has to do with faith, truth, wisdom. Like, what do you believe in? where maybe it's travel, maybe it's foreign travel, although that's not something that I can't readily do. I don't think a lot of people can do it, period. But, maybe there's a sense of the world and looking out into the world and really being focused on the world and really putting your philosophy out there. Mars can be very forward. It can be very aggressive. You've been telling people exactly what you believe in, even maybe if they don't want to listen. So Mars retrograde is a time when you have to walk back a little bit and take a second look at what are you putting your faith into? What are you putting your convictions behind? Are they aligned? Are they the best choices? What's your sense of right and wrong? What's your moral compass telling you? Is it should be over here and instead you're over here? So there's a sense of having to go back. And Mars can be a little bit of a know-it-all in this part of the chart. So just be careful about what you're really sort of fighting, what sort of truths you're fighting, because there's a sense of needing to ask yourself, is this really true? Or are there other truths? So that's another aspect of this Mars retrograde. Virgo. So Virgo, Mars in Aries has been, since the end of June, a time that's been stirring up a lot of deep emotions. You've been having to maybe face some fears, face some deep feelings, face things that have roots in the past. This Virgo, you're a sign that's so much about health, but this has been a time to focus on your emotional health, your psychological health. How do you, in that very Virgo way, get very pure, get very, clean things out? Look at some of the unconscious motivations, needs, wants, and desires that have maybe been driving things. Maybe it's a time when you've had to be very vulnerable, very uncomfortable, but it's necessary. Maybe it means having to face yourselves and in turn share that self with others. So this has been a deep time for you. So Mars retrograde is saying you have to go back and look at something on a deep emotional and psychological level that maybe you haven't quite looked at fully. So there is an opportunity in all of this. I will say this part of the chart does talk about money and finance and assets and things that you own, like property and own with other people. So there might be a financial matter that needs a second look during this time, something that you are working out until the end of the year. Libra. So Aries is your relationship sign. And so this is a time in your life where there's a lot of emphasis on other people. Now, these other people can be an intimate partner, like a boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, husband, wife, all those things. But it can also be just how you do relationships in general. So this part of your life is really hot right now, Libra. It's more about what somebody else wants instead of what you want. So you're sort of having to negotiate that a little bit more. So if partnership and other people are very key in your life right now, Mars retrograde means that you're going back and taking a second look at a relationship or relationships in general. Is there something, do you need to take another look at a relationship? Is there a need for renewed commitment or looking at existing commitments, because Mars is square Saturn? What direction are you and a partner going with? So if a issue with a intimate partner comes up or a serious partner comes up, then you might be working on that issue for the next couple of months, and then that gives you time to hopefully work out a new way of doing things. Just looking at the comments, Cobra Kai wasn't fantastic. I'm still working my way through season 2 of Cobra Kai. It's kind of gratifying in a strange way, but anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. Mars. So we're talking about Mars for Libra. So this is kind of a bigger time for you, Libra, where maybe this is like punching on a lot of different things in your life, because Saturn is in your what's called your 4th house, home and family, and there's a lot of big questions going on, I think, for Libra right now. So really pay attention to how people are showing up in your life, how you are showing up in other people's lives, because this is going to be a big theme throughout the second half of this year, if it isn't already. Scorpio, this part of your chart talks about work. It talks about projects. It talks about overwork, because sometimes Scorpio, oh, sorry, it's helicopters. Pause. Welcome to Brooklyn. So Scorpio, this is a time where this exposes a little bit something that you're well known for, which is overwork. So Mars and Scorpio, not Mars and Scorpio, Mars for Scorpio is a time when you have to look at the projects, the work, the practices and stuff that you are really putting all your work into. Are you overworking yourselves? Do you have workaholic tendencies? Do you need to get new balance, do something differently? So Mars is sort of walking you back in the part of your chart that is very nuts and bolts fundamental about day-to-day life, not just work, but also health, wellness, how you take care of yourself, how you take care of your body, how you don't take care of your body. This is a part of, I think, with all the signs, this is Mars at its most physical. This is Mars that really needs something to do. It needs to get the blood pumping. It needs exercise. It needs cardio. It needs fresh air. It needs to walk. So this is a time when you really have to look at your physical health, especially Scorpio. And if you have not been doing your physical health, this Mars retrograde is a time when you either get a second chance or it may expose something that's already been there and you have to go back and look at it again. But things need to change. Scorpio, you're really good at making changes, so I'm sure you can really transform. But that's the second look. And Mars is your planet, Scorpio, so this very much has to do with you. You can't quite move forward. You have to sort of go with the flow. You have to go back and look at maybe the paperwork and how things are organized and maybe say, wait, maybe we need a new way of doing this. Maybe we need a different system. Maybe we need to organize this differently. Maybe we need to work differently. So there you go, Scorpio. Sagittarius. So this part of your chart talks about how you express who you are, your identity, your persona, your self-expression, your creativity, your talents. There's a you-ness to this part of your chart. So this kind of walks you back on maybe something that you feel very like, I know who I am. Well, do you? Maybe you've been expressing yourself in a way that might be a little bit too much or might be a little over domineering, overbearing, because Mars has been in your fifth for a while. But this is taking a second look about how you express yourself, taking a second look about how you express your talents and take your talents seriously. This could be a time when it's going back and looking at romantic themes. Certainly this part of the chart does talk about romance, more in the romance of life. So that is what you're looking at. Also maybe issues with children, because this part of your chart does also talk about children as well. Capricorn. So Capricorn, this is the part of your chart that talks about home, family, living situation. Mars retrograde. Well, let me take a step back for a moment. This part of your chart, since the end of June, it's really been about focusing on your home environment, focusing on family, focusing on things about the past, things about the roots you have. And so Mars has sort of been kind of motivating you to really focus on your living situation, your home and family. But the Mars retrograde is a time to go back and take a second look. So maybe there's been a move, maybe you need to go back and fix something, redo something with the move. Maybe you've been thinking about a move and this is the time to think even more, and then maybe the move is later this year. Maybe it's a sense of there's been a family issue and you have to go back and kind of do things a little bit differently. Even Mars in this part of your chart talks about how you engage with family members. How do you get your emotional needs met? Do you get your emotional needs met? I think when Mars is in this part of this chart, it can be a bit fussy like a little baby that has not gotten what it needs. And so you might be looking back at your emotional needs over the next couple of months. You might be very loud, Mars, in your expression of how you're not getting your emotional needs met. So really pay attention to the feelings that are coming up right now. Aquarius, this part of your chart talks about voice, it talks about communication, it talks about how you express your ideas, your thoughts, your words, your learning, classes, movement. It could be even travel as well. So with Mars in Aries, you've had a lot to say. So maybe you've had a little bit too much to say. Maybe your words have been pointed. Mars doesn't always have the most grace. So maybe you've said some things that you need to go back and sort of undo a mess, or maybe find some diplomacy, or look at things, get new ideas, new perspectives. Mars is also in the part of your chart that talks about choices. So you might need to take a walk back on the choices that you've been making since the end of June. Do you need to make new choices? Last but not least, Pisces. So this part of your chart talks about money, how you earn it, how you spend it, what you need in order to feel like you're having all your material needs met. It's very much about material stability right now, and maybe you've been very motivated to create more material stability in your life over the past few months. So how do you take a second look at spending? How do you take a second look at resource, your relationship with resource, your relationship with value and worth? And how do you get a new sense of self-worth? How do you get a new sense of value? Maybe making changes in spending, maybe making changes in how you earn a living. Mars is giving you a very different perspective over the next couple of months on something that's very kind of roots and nuts and bolts and practical to your life. So you might have a very different perspective when Mars turns direct on November 13th. Again, Mars is turning retrograde in a square to Saturn, so that tells us that the next 2 months, it's a karmic work. It's a need to put things back into order. It's a need to put things in balance. It's a need to find harmony if there's not been harmony. Mars is one of the relationship planets, along with Venus. They talk about relationships. So there's an element of relationship or relational quality to every experience that we're all having individually. How do we have a different relationship with that part of our lives? So that's Mars retrograde. Are we going to possibly feel frustrated over the next 2 months? Probably. Are we going to maybe feel hot-tempered? Maybe. Are we going to lose our cool because things aren't happening the way that we want them to happen? It's quite likely. Do we learn to have more patience and tolerance? Absolutely. Do we learn to use our Mars in a different way, go with the flow, take action, but maybe take action in a much different way of seeing things? So that's Mars retrograde. Collectively, like I said, when I looked into the astrology of 2020, this is back at the end of the year, back at the end of 2019, it sort of felt like there was some sort of breaks, but we'll see. We will see how things go. Jan is saying that she has a natal Mars retrograde. I do not, but actually Empowering Astrology was born under Mars retrograde. So yes, I conceived of this while Mars was retrograde. So retrogrades aren't inherently bad. It's just sometimes we need Mars retrograde to do something that we couldn't do when Mars was direct, because we need a new perspective. So there you go. This week, yes, Mars retrograde is dominating our experiences. It's also important to note that the Sun in Virgos gets up to what's called an opposition to Neptune later this week. So this is the Sun's annual opposition to Neptune in Pisces. So this means this week, sort of along the lines of this Mars theme and Mars retrograde, we have to surrender. We can't move forward the way that we want to. It's not about our personal agenda. It's what's the best thing that works for everybody? How do we open our hearts? I've said this in previous Facebook Lives. I love personally the dynamic between Virgo and Pisces. And when we're in Virgo season, it's very much about the real world, our duties, our responsibilities, our physical life, our health. But Pisces, the opposite sign of Virgo, reminds us that we can't be so enmeshed in the physical world that we lose the magic, or we lose a vision or intuition or a feeling. And a lot of people come to me and they're cut off from their intuition, and they say to me, well, Katie, what do I do? What's the practical step? Well, practical step, Virgo, meditate. So maybe this week we're meditating. Maybe this week we're paying attention to our dreams. We're starting a dream journal. Maybe this week we're reconsidering our spirituality and our spiritual connection. Now, spirituality is not religion. Religion is a way of understanding the world, like the best way that we can understand our spiritual world. But Neptune and Pisces, it speaks to something within. It's something that we discover within. It's the mystic. It's something that you feel when you're meditating. It's an inner knowing. It's sometimes a very loud inner knowing, and you can't prove it to anybody, but you know it. And that's something, that's Neptune, that's Pisces, even though I use traditional rulers. So we need to find that inner truth. We need to connect with our deepest self this week. Otherwise, it may feel disorienting. It may feel confusing, Sun opposite Neptune. It may feel like what we know to be like true, because we can touch it, Sun and Virgo, isn't true because the opposition to Neptune. So it's kind of an interesting week. A lot of different things are going on. Sun trines Jupiter in the middle part of this week. That's usually a time, like it kind of picks up on repeats a lot of the themes that we're dealing with, especially with the Neptune opposition, about faith and truth and wisdom and meaning. That's very much at the heart of what are called the four mutable signs. We take ideas, information, Gemini, we move it over to Virgo, we discern, we organize, we sort, we move over to Sagittarius, it integrates into wisdom and knowledge, and then there becomes that next step where that wisdom and knowledge becomes universal and collective. It becomes something that we feel, it's intuitive. So this is kind of the four mutable signs, but these are signs that are very, on some level, driven by faith. They're driven by a need for meaning, a need for information, a need for ideas. So we're really feeling it that week. But again, it's Virgo season. We have to have our feet on the ground. We have to have things organized. We have to have our ducks in a row. So that's sort of like my, like I said, I've been thinking about Mars for a while, because like I said, I was watching Karate Kid, and like there's a lesson. That's the two sides of Mars. There's the bully, he gets defeated, and like what does that mean, and like how does that bully find himself again? How does he find, because he's like, he really overly identifies with that defeat, and he lives his life in a state of being defeated. But then in the show Cobra Kai, he starts to redefine himself. He starts to understand the root of why he was the bully, because he was raised by a bully, and then he was taught karate by a bully. So that's how he did his Mars. But there's an evolution of character where he's starting to find a different expression. It's not so cut and dry, obviously. It's a little messy, but then we see the story of like what happens with the hero, what happens with the winner. Does he have what's his relationship with Mars? Is he still embodying his Mars? But anyway, we all have a Mars. We're all gonna get super in touch with our Mars over the next couple of months until November 13th. And my only practical advice is, again, New York is being loud. It's not that we can't move forward. We just have to move forward differently. If you have big plans or you're launching things, or you're trying to do big things between now and November, it's not the end of the world, but you might need to do it differently. That's all. So that's me using different elements of pop culture, although dated pop culture, but relevant. especially with Mars retrograde, on how do we look at Mars and the archetype of Mars. Maybe I'll start to look for archetypes of Venus, archetypes of Jupiter. So that's the astrology of this week. Yes, how do we use this information, this wisdom, this knowledge to help us work on ourselves, to understand our half of the astrology, which is us. How do we do the astrology? How does the astrology do us? It is a relationship. We have to put more of our presence into things. Otherwise, the astrology drives us, and then it's a very different relationship. It's more fated, it's more limited, but we want to bring our consciousness always to the astrology. So that's the astrology of September 7th through 13th, 2020. Again, my name is Katie Sweetman. You can find me online at empoweringastrology.com. You can book a consultation. I know that some of you who are watching live are my clients, so I thank you. That's the biggest compliment, is to invest your time with me. And also, you can watch the replay on YouTube, on Spotify. You can listen to this as a podcast, or on IGTV over on Instagram. I'm Empowering Astro. So thank you so much for joining me this evening, watching the replay, watching live. Thank you for saying hi, letting me know where you are in the world. My Sag rising can't travel right now, but I can travel through you. So I know some of you are waking up and watching me in Australia. I know some of you are here in the United States, some of you in the UK and Canada, and in Italy, which I unfortunately not in right now, otherwise I'd be eating all the things. So anyway, thank you for joining me. We will do this again next week when we talk about Jupiter turning direct and some of the other big points for September's astrology. Until then, take care. Bye.